coming to get you, Barbara.
Here's some money. Go see a Star War.
But I'm trying, Ringo. I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd.
Welcome back to Long Walk Talks. My name is David Hensley. I'm the owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions, and I am joined today, as always, by my co-hosts, Stan Wilson Lee.
Hello.
And Chris Wilson Barnes.
A pleasure to be here. Say, could I interest either of you in a chocolate-covered pretzel?
You absolutely cannot. We are going to be continuing our discussion of the filmography of Kevin Smith today with his second film, Mallrats. If you haven't caught up, last month in January, we discussed the film Clerks, and we're doing this hot off the heels of our year-long Quentin Tarantino Quarantino discussion that we did in 2020. What a year that was. So, guys, Mallrats, huh?
Yeah.
What an experience this was, revisiting it after what had to have been 18 years, probably. I first saw this film when I was 16 years old. As I've talked about on the podcast before, it's one of like the films that kicked off my passion for movies and movie making. Clerks and Mallrats, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Clerks and Mallrats, along with Reservoir Dogs and
Did
Pulp
we just
Fiction.
foreshadow?
God, I hope not.
About as subtly as Kevin did in this movie.
Yeah. There is a huge difference between seeing this movie at 16 as a teenage boy and watching it again at 34 as a grown man. What are your initial thoughts before we jump into our discussion topics? Let's start with Stan. What are your thoughts on Mallrats?
We've talked about this kind of ad nauseum, but the idea that it's not a great movie in the sense of structure and soundness of a craft or whatever, but it does set off a lot of his tropes officially, you know, Kevin Smith's tropes and how he, his formula, and basically we have it in Clerks, but this is really the foundation of the power of Jay and Silent Bob.
Oh yeah.
So in the sense of that, and again, I like it better than I think you did. And and I may have actually liked it better than I did the first time I saw it. It's definitely not in my top echelon. There's not as many Smith films, I don't think, in the View Askew as there is in the Tarantino verse. So to rank it at the bottom of this View Askew verse, that's not very low in a sense, you know. But it's definitely not in my top 3 Kevin Smith films. But in the sense of what it starts, you know, and the foundations that it sets for the future of the View Askew universe, I think it's sound in that sense. But yeah, it's not great. But we do get Joy Lauren Adams, who is cute all the way for the rest of her Kevin Smith experiences. So
yeah, Chris, thoughts on Mallrats?
It's a fun, deeply flawed movie.
Okay, yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. And yeah, it is definitely a movie where Jay and Silent Bob came into their own as full characters and not just like a sideshow to cut to in Clerks.
Yeah, they're show stealers.
They are, absolutely.
Yeah, I went into this movie. We watched it again, me and my wife Katie and Chris, last Saturday night. And I had a feeling, having not watched it since I was 16. I saw it for the first time at 16. I know I watched it once or twice more after that, but having been so long, I had a feeling this wasn't going to be what I remembered it to be. And my God, was it not?
There is the exact moment where you realize this is a live action cartoon, and that is the grappling hook escape.
Yeah. I don't even really know how to summarize the film. It's about two guys named... yeah, go ahead. Let's see what you can come up with.
Well, two other weird losers, not named Dante and Randall, run around a mall all day after having been simultaneously dumped by their girlfriends.
Mm-hmm. And stuff happens around them.
Stuff happens. Hijinks ensue.
Yeah, it's two guys get dumped and go to the mall, and things happen around them.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I should point out, when we watched this, we sat down and watched it. We sat down and we watched the newly released Arrow Blu-ray.
It's a special edition.
Yeah, high-res
release,
special edition release.
It didn't help matters any.
Yeah, completely digitally restored.
If you watch the special features, they're probably
we didn't.
Tinted up a little bit.
It has on it the original cut, which we watched. It has the extended cut where they put in all the stuff that Smith originally had in it that.
Yeah, in the original version of the film, there was a much different opening, and there was a different through line throughout that explained a lot of TS's backstory.
Yeah, there was a much different subplot that in the movie.
Well, let's kick off our actual discussion topics with the very top of the movie, which is that weird animated, the opening credit sequence that is everything wrong with 90s comic books in one montage. I mean, all you have to do, if you wanted to give somebody a dissertation on what was wrong with comic books in the 90s, show them the opening credits of Clerks.
I did not check, but I am pretty sure that looked like, from the styles and everything, it looks like he got like people from like Image Comics. Mm-hmm. I know I saw a Liefeld in there. Yeah,
it was Liefeldian for sure. Yeah, all the overly muscled male characters, which if you've ever seen...
Too many lines.
Yeah. If you guys...
Too many lines.
If you listeners have ever seen that one particular Captain America cover where he has just got this massive chest and shoulders and this tiny little pinhead, it's like that. I think the only thing that was really missing from this opening montage was nobody had any pouches. Mm-mm. Which became a staple of every superhero in the 90s. But it did have plenty of lovingly drawn close-ups of cleavage and butts for all of the female characters.
You were talking about how you loved it at 16 and it was a foundation for you wanting to be a filmmaker and that it was an influence. They kind of open up the movie once they get to the mall, talking about how we're kind of made for 16-year-olds. This is a movie made for the 16-year-old boys getting into their first rated R movie and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And all the talk about libido and stuff, you're going to relate to it at 16, because your hormones are going as crazy as Brody's and TS's were.
But what's disconcerting to me about the movie, and this kind of carries over from Clerks as well, is you can expect that from a hormonal teenage boy. These characters are all in their early to mid 20s.
They talk about college.
I know they're 22. It's not that far removed.
It's worth pointing out that this film takes place the day before Clerks does.
So keep that in mind when you look at how characters are dressed. Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that opening credit sequence, Stan? The animation?
I was kind of surprised that was the opening topic because
it's only the opening topic because it was the first thing I wrote down. Chris can tell you that montage started and I was like, holy shit, 90s.
See, I think
because I've never really, and this is going to probably date me or make me really a horrible person, but I've never been in that camp of it's like, ooh, wow. But I've always been part of the demographic that comics have been written for. So it's like, but yeah, it's like now that we're talking about it, yeah, I can see that. But I wasn't as bothered, and it didn't really hit me in any. I didn't have any feels for it about it. after I saw it. I just thought, oh wow, they're using the comics because it's about comic books,
right?
You know,
so this isn't going to make for good podcasting since this is an audio format. But I'm going to post this picture in the comments on the Long Walk Podcast Facebook page for people to go and look if you've never seen this before. This is the Captain America cover that I'm referencing.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Peck shelf. Yep.
Yeah.
People have diagrammed the anatomy and how horrible it is. It's Liefeld, and it's just he has probably some of the worst idea of anatomy out of anyone who's ever drawn a person.
Like it's like he got rib
But how
surgery.
successful was his run? That's quite.
Oh, he was very successful in the 90s.
Yeah, so.
But that's the problem with the 90s comics is like that's why I said too many lines. People made a habit of, excuse me, using too many lines so that like things were over detailed and just kind of ugly.
Yeah, I mean, look at early Todd McFarlane stuff, like the initial Spawn runs, and how overly muscled and constantly greasy looking everyone was, and just how exploitative the women were drawn. And we're talking about an industry where women are already drawn exploitatively. This just took that up to 11.
It's really interesting because, you know, I'm growing up with like late 60s into early 80s comics. And then there was a whole span of time.
The 90s?
Well, yeah, the 90s where I wasn't really reading comics. So it's like you guys came up and that was your prime time of comics is during this time I guess we're talking about. So it's like maybe I didn't ever have that. And yes, I mean, especially the women characters were drawn specifically
yeah.
in my time, but it's like I never really, that really didn't hit me until I started going more in depth with the creation of comics, and especially like when Image Comics and all the alternative comics, you know, and like Love and Rockets and stuff like that were coming out, and you know, and it's like, okay, we're going to make comments about the established folks, you know. It's like, so that was when I first even got an inkling of, oh, there's major there's major controversy in the comics field. And when I was into comics, there was, you know, they were written for boys, you know,
right.
They were written for guys, you know. It's like guys were collecting, guys were reading, you know, and then, oh, shoot, we have girls reading us now, so maybe we should be a little bit more attentive. And then, you know, so it's like, yes, I admit I missed that
a whole decade. That
decade, but the aspect of, you know, I should be more sensitive to this. Yeah. So if that's an issue that I apologize for not being.
It's nothing to apologize for.
Yeah, it's nothing even like that. There's plenty of good stuff that happened in the 90s, yeah. But I mean, this unfortunately doesn't really show it off all that much. There's a reason that the phrase "grim and gritty" got coined in the 90s.
Yeah. Everything. Well, I mean, that really kicked off in the 80s, but everything had to be darker and grittier. Chris, what are your thoughts on that animated opening montage?
I wasn't like, for all the reasons you said, I wasn't really a fan. It just kind of highlighted the things that I did not enjoy seeing in 90s comics.
Yeah.
And honestly, thinking about it, the Stan Lee cover should have been a throwback.
Yeah, realistically.
I mean, honestly, just from in terms of what I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, it's just... that's the first time I really ever saw the opening, because before I bought it on DVD, and I didn't watch it much after that. When I caught it on TV, I never saw the opening.
Right. All right, well, we're going to move on to our second topic, which is the two main characters of this film, T.S. and Brody, Dante and Randall 2.0. Like, these are the exact same characters, basically, just you put them in... I was going to say I put them in a different profession, but we don't even know what the hell their profession is. What was stopping Smith from just making this film about another day in the life of Dante and Randall?
I don't know. I mean, I will say one thing about Kevin Smith's characters. I kind of touched on it last episode. Was I like the way he characterizes people, where they come off as fully characterized. And he's fine with you not liking them immediately. You don't feel like you have to. Like, it's never pounded over your head as like, just because they're the protagonists, you need to be in love with them.
Right.
Because their flaws are on display. But to its detriment, especially when it should have been the time that you turned a corner, especially on Brody, he didn't soften them quick enough.
No. Or at all, really.
No. Well, here's the thing. With Brody, he had that Randall-esque anger. Abrasiveness within him. He displayed it. He displayed more care about things in that vein early on when he's complaining about the kid on the escalator.
That kid is back on the escalator again.
You can kind of excuse it because he's in that age range where it's like you don't know how to approach someone with tact. Mm-hmm. You're more likely to yell about it like Brody does instead of saying, "Hey, you want to be careful. Your kid could get caught on the escalator sitting on it like that." But no, he spends the whole scene looking at the kid on the escalator and just yelling about it.
Yeah. Stan, thoughts on T.S. and Brody and how similar they are to Dante and Randall?
Well, I guess, and I don't know how. I'm assuming Smith knew this, but these are supposed to be different characters because it's the day before Clerks, right? Or at the time this was made, he probably didn't have that inkling, right?
No, I think the references that are made, and we'll talk about this more when we get to it because I dedicated a whole topic to it. But yeah, I think it was definitely purposeful.
Okay.
He knew that there was a chronology here.
So I think he wanted to. He did the slacker stuff with Clerks. I just did air quotes, which meant nothing. He did the slacker with Clerks. So now he's going to college kids, and somebody that is actively pursuing an after college, or supposed to be, because I guess he was studying like economic theory and stuff like that.
Who?
T.S. T.S. is
really?
Yeah,
I got no inclination.
I have no idea.
At the end of the film, before Brody's like talking about what's great about T.S. And he's like an economic major.
I missed that entirely.
Economic philosophy. So it's like. Again, a career that's probably not going to have practical aspects, but the idea that he was all ready to take what's her face to get married,
Brandy
to get married, and at Universal Studios. So obviously has an idea of his future, right, and that he's going to be able to take care of her and stuff like that. So there's a sense that he has an idea of what would be accomplishment.
It's
where Dante went to school and then dropped out, and doesn't really have a path, even though he's supposed to be, fairly. And then it's like, yes, we may not. They are still smartly written for the most part, though. They're not dumb people.
No, not dumb.
They're not dumb like the security guard.
But Brody isn't a servant man-child.
Michael Rookies. Yes, I agree with that. He's got that man-child stuff that what's his face did, Randall did, but they know shit, and but they don't know how to take care of shit.
I think it's very interesting, these two characters coming off of the heels of Clerks, in which Dante and Randall both have day jobs, and they both work for a living to some degree.
As unreliable as they are capable of holding some sort of responsibility.
Right, and capable of having serious discussions. You go from that to T.S. and Brody, who... If there was a mention of what T.S. does or studied in the movie, I have no idea what it is. Brody apparently does nothing but play video games and read comics. I don't think there's a single mention of what Brody was, if he went to school, if he has a job, I don't know.
Hey, he also played hockey on Sega.
Right, yeah, exactly.
To tie it in with the hockey on the roof?
But just to go from... I can see like one kind of slacker to a completely different kind of slacker, but still, I just can't help but wonder, why wasn't it just Dante and Randall? The question that's going to haunt me. No, I don't know. Yeah, it just bothered me that so early on, it's like, oh, this is just like if Dante and Randall had a day off.
I guess he wanted similar characters, but in different circles, like cultural circles. Mm-hmm. You know, and I mean, not well in terms of like what their social scene is, because you know, Dante and Randall are the guys they're similar in age to them, but they're in different worlds because they basically do work and don't bother with school. And then there's like, you know, that whole sort of different structure when you're still in college.
Yeah,
I guess. But yeah, you're right. I mean, considering how he wrote them, there's not too much of a difference, and it's kind of surprising those four characters never see each other.
Right.
If I had a question about that, is like, which is either worse or more interesting, is that we'll make T.S. and Dante the same character.
I mean, kind of, yeah. Because Brody and Randall are the abrasive, loud ones.
Dante has this weird, non-committal idea about commitment, and you know, and
he's non-committal about commitment.
Where T.S. has this strong idea.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, he knows he wants to be with Brandy.
He knows he wants to be with Brandy, and there's really the only person that could even approach Brandy for him is Gwen. It's Gwen, and he's already been with Gwen, mm-hmm. And he knows that they're done. That'll never happen. Blah 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 blah. But the idea that so who is more interesting to write about? And this is my question: is that are they not the same because he wanted to rewrite that kind of relationship where T.S. his conflict is not about, you know, do I want to be with her? It's like he knows so the conflict is how he's going to get her back.
Yeah, the conflicts, I will say, in this movie are much more clearly defined. Their girlfriends broke up with them. They want their girlfriends back. They're somehow going to do that through spending a day at the mall.
It's pretty monogamous if you think about it.
Yeah, whereas...
Funny enough, Brandy broke up with T.S. because she didn't feel he was... sensitive enough
about a death that he may have caused.
And who was Brody? What was the
Renee.
Name? Renee breaks up with Brody because she wants to be treated like a person.
Right. What a monster for wanting the bare minimum of respect from
to
her
meet
boyfriend.
His mom.
Right.
Because for some reason Brody felt he needed to hide her.
Right. And not to mention
it's Shannon Doherty. Why would you need to hide?
Right. Not to mention there's the whole discussion of how he farted while she was going down on him. Yeah, I can kind of see in the relationship aspect how T.S. and Dante are polar opposites. Now that you bring that up, still like same way.
I agree with you that Randall and Brody are pretty much the same,
and are in fact implied to be cousins.
Yes. And implied to be cousins, yes. But I still think Brody still has more of a strong sense of, if I'm with somebody, I'm with them. Mm-hmm. Even though he might not. I wanted to call her Shannon Doherty. In Renee's eyes, that he's treating her like she should be treated, but she is who he's with, and that's who he's with. So there's not a sense of, I could be with somebody else, you know. It's like, you know, I don't need you. It's like, no, he's chosen her, and the thing that he's chosen, you know, he wants to be with, you know. It's like, so in that sense, I think he's a little bit more mature than Randall might be. But I agree with you that they are, because the movie, when we first meet Randall, it's loud. I mean, when we first meet Brody, it's loud. That the movie starts out really loud, and so it's like you got the loud argument between T.S. and Brandy.
Yeah, too many character names.
And there's two main characters that have a bruh starting this.
Brody, Brandy.
And then we get the Brody, Renee breakup.
Oh, there's some subtext there to get into.
Right.
And poor Shannon Doherty, she had to spend the movie yelling at the highest pitch of her voice, you know, and whole lines, not just, you know, screaming, but having to say whole
having to be
speeches.
the voice of reason for all of these fucking morons.
And it had to be really loud. So that's what, it's like, did you need to write everybody so loud at the beginning? But it did catch us. We do get attention.
Well, Renee is sort of the Veronica of this film in that she is the voice of reason and she's the only fucking sane person.
Yeah. And honestly, that's debatable considering, she points it out, how much she put up with in her relationship with Brody.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is she the... And I don't know if we got... But Gwen, I think... do you not...
I don't think we find out enough about Gwen. For fuck's sake, she is trying on panties in the middle of a store.
But because of Silent Bob crashing
still, who's
three of her dressing rooms.
What person is going to stand...
She's nice, but she's nuts.
Yeah, what person is going to stand in the middle of a boutique trying on panties? But I guess the germane point here is Dante and Randall, their problems were all existentially driven, whereas for the most part, T.S. and Brody, their problems are a little bit more grounded.
I think they're definitely more reality based.
And I think that's mostly on purpose, considering the insane hijinks going on around them.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Now, if I can start pronouncing words properly tonight, we'll be off to a great start.
The end.
Yep. So we are going to move on to our third discussion topic. If I can get my phone here unlocked. This is going to be a short one. Just a note that I wrote down while watching it. What was up with that fucking magical soundproof elevator that Renee and Brody banged in after screaming at each other while T.S. and Shannon were standing outside?
On top of the fact that he shouldn't have had the ability to stop that elevator.
Right. Anybody should have been able to press the up button and open it up and see them having sex.
Was it implied that it had moved a little and then he stopped it? So it's where
it never went,
and they got
it. Right? It never went. The doors closed and he locked it somehow.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then it was either the quietest sex ever, but they had like a super heated argument.
Yeah, exactly. They are screaming at each other right before they have sex.
Yeah.
So maybe it's soundproof.
Yeah.
So what's recording studio?
It has to be, because I've stood outside many an elevator. There's an elevator we use at work. Mm-hmm. If you speak loud enough, you can hear through it.
Yeah, exactly. I was just so... Out of all the weird shit that happened in this movie, for some reason, it was the weird soundproof elevator that made me stop and go, wait, what is happening here?
And there was a crowd outside that elevator by the time they were done.
Right. The crowd should have been there because it's like, wow, there are two people having sex in there. Can't you hear them?
That's all. I'm betting that's also a major reason why most elevators in places like malls today are like glass. You can see them.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the entirety of that topic. I just want to discuss the weird, magical, soundproof elevator.
There's a lot of contrived moments in this movie.
There are.
That is probably the most of the contrived.
I told Dave, it's like, watching this, it's not, I'm sure it wasn't the first at this point. Of course, it wasn't the first, but it was very much, it's very much almost the prime example of wacky hijinks in X place in a 90s movie.
Yeah,
right.
It's very specific, because I've seen worse versions of this.
Yeah,
I've
seen better versions of it too.
It's a John Hughes film if you think about it, but John Hughes was a lot more non-contrived.
Right, and John Hughes usually had something to say in his films.
Yeah, exactly.
We have talked about this on here before plenty of times, that I don't really feel like a movie ever really needs to have a moral or be trying to say something in order to tell a good story. But if you pressed me to tell you what the hell Mallrats was actually about, I don't know. Like, you could call Clerks the plight of the working man. Mallrats is consumerism and selfishness.
Kind of, but it is at its heart about Brody and TS get dumped, so they go to basically try and feel better, like just basically like lift their spirits by just going and hanging out at the mall like they normally do. I'll get there in a second. Brody spots Renee, and TS realizes that this Brandy's dad, Mr. Svenings, the game show he's producing is going to be at the mall shooting their pilot. So amidst everything else, they're also trying to work on ways to, you know, win back their respective loves. TS's has to be more grandiose because it has to do with getting around the fact that Mr. Svenings is actively trying to sabotage them. A point that he made in the opening that I don't think Brandy wasn't paying attention to because it's her dad, so she's not receptive to the idea that he doesn't like their relationship.
And because TS is that lovelorn, hopeless romantic archetype,
right?
While also being a man-child,
right? Which brings me back to the opening, which Brandy ends up breaking up with TS because he doesn't care. He doesn't really give a shit that Julie Dwyer died because they're about to go on their Florida trip. But Brandy agreed to. But Julie Dwyer was going to be on the pilot of the dating show that Svenings was producing. So she agreed to step in and be the girl on the show. And because TS is saying it's like, we're supposed to go on our trip today, she gets upset that he's insensitive about it and breaks up with him. So when he gets to the mall and finds out that the game show's happening there, which, I'm sorry, they knew they ask what are they building over there regarding the set, and they say, oh, maybe that's where the Easter Bunny is. But the fact that they knew the Easter Bunny had already been there and was getting pictures done with kids, and it had to have been, if it was coming up for Easter, that Easter Bunny had to have been there at least a week ahead of time. I'm sorry, they're just so fucking oblivious. Like the plot made them so fucking oblivious about the idea that he didn't know where the game show was happening.
This is the hill that you've chosen to die on?
It's one of the things that bothered me more than anything else. He didn't realize that's where the game show was gonna fucking be.
I mean, that's fair. That's the sort of thing that, like, if they're shooting a pilot for a TV show that a local person is producing in this town, that shit's going to be on the paper. In the paper. It's going to be on the news. Local pilot shooting at this mall.
And you'd especially know it if you're dating the daughter of the man producing it.
Right. And I suppose that could speak to, just like you were saying, how oblivious TS is. Or it could just speak to bad writing. Who knows?
A kind of both, it feels like.
So it was shortly after the magical soundproof elevator sex scene that I was looking at my notes and watching the movie, and I just wrote down 4 words. This movie is terrible.
It's not great.
No, it's not. And I was just like, holy shit, there was a point in my life at which I liked this movie and recommended this to other people.
I think you like the feeling of watching it.
Yeah. Like I was talking, a couple nights ago, we recorded an episode of This Is a Takeover with Shelby Ray Patterson and Gina Belmont, and I was telling them about this, and they're not really familiar with Kevin Smith, and I was like, you know, normally I would say watch it so that you could say you've seen it and form your own opinion on it, especially if you like other Kevin Smith stuff. No, I don't think in the oeuvre of Kevin Smith's filmography, you don't need to see this one. I think you need to see Clerks to see where he started off at and, you know, where he was grounded at. You don't really need to see this one. You can skip over it and go straight to Chasing Amy.
No, but yeah, you're right, because there's not a lot of major plot points or plot threads from this that the only thing you'd be confused about is when Brody shows up in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Right. All right, so that was my number 4 note. This movie is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, you only need to see Mallrats if you're a fan and want to be a completely.
Yeah, essentially. Or if you're hosting a podcast about Kevin Smith.
About Kevin Smith, you know, and it's like, and like I said, I liked it more at this point in my life than I did when I first saw it, which is weird for me to say because that's usually not the case.
Definitely wasn't the case for me.
This would have been the movie I would like, you know, this would have been my Hateful Eight for you.
Right.
Fair.
But I was surprised and I dug it because and you had told me this before, Chris, that it was more nostalgia that I was taking in, you know, and so it's like I
say that on my behalf too.
Yeah.
I liked a lot of this, even though we'll talk about it later, in that there was a lot of dated stuff and there's a lot of stuff that is questionable now.
Oh, you guys remember Malls?
And there's definitely a lot of plot points that wouldn't fly today.
Exactly.
No, we'll talk. That's going to be our last discussion.
Okay. But just to jump off of that real quick, I just wanted to say I think there's a lot of good in the movie that he kept, and there's a lot of good lessons he learned from this movie, because he's admitted that he took and used going forward.
Yeah.
Hey, but you mentioned it earlier, David, that the Jay and Silent Bob stuff, it steals. I mean,
it does.
You want to get back to Jay and Silent Bob every time, and I think this is where, okay, we're going to go see a Kevin Smith film, but it's not because it's a Kevin Smith film. We're going to see what Jay and Silent Bob do this time.
Right, which is so weird because you could easily remove Jay and Silent Bob from this film and it would have zero effect on it. And also, I mean, they're a pretty significant portion of the film. I don't have a single note here about the two of them or a discussion topic about Jay and Silent Bob.
No.
They're just there. So it was around the time...
Snooches.
Oh, God. It was around the time that I wrote number 4, this movie is terrible, that Katie looked at me and showed me her own note, which said, had Kevin Smith met a woman prior to the making of this movie? Now, on the one hand, obviously, Kevin Smith had met a woman. There's several of them in Clerks. And he has a mother. But on the other hand...
He has a sister who works on
who both were in Clerks.
On the other hand, had he ever spoken to a woman prior to this? Because the way... I appreciate the way that Veronica is written in Clerks. I like her a lot as a character. Caitlin, not so much, but that's intentional. Like, Caitlin, as a character, was not a good person. She was not good for Dante.
But she was smartly written. For the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. Like, it was intentional that you're not supposed to like Caitlin and you are supposed to like Veronica. And I get the feeling in this movie that you were supposed to like both Brandy and Renee. And to an extent, I do like Renee. But some of the things that he wrote for them and some of the things that they have to say are so painful.
This movie does not pass the Bechdel test.
Oh, no, not even a little bit. I mean, even Gwen, Joey Lauren Adams' character, contributes overall nothing to the plot.
Well, no, she serves there to tell Brandy how great TS is.
Right.
And she has to come to terms with that. So
does she?
She I mean, we have to. We get to share that she has had, you know, even though she dealt with TS before and that she broke up with him and that she's had many affairs, it's like, but he is the one that got away. He is the good guy. And it's like, and so we get to find that she has a history with him that she regrets not pursuing. And the fact that she's going to, not to take him away from Brandy, but to influence Brandy and say, it's like, I had my opportunity, and if you allow him to get away, I might take that opportunity again. But the idea that she is using her experience with TS, and it's like, really, he's the good one, and I let him go. But maybe the fact that I let him go was meant so you could have him. So
she didn't so much let him go as cheat on him constantly. Words,
but
right.
I know what you mean. What you mean.
She does know that he is the good one, and that Brandy shouldn't just like wish him away.
Right. But also in saying that, like, much like Jay and Silent Bob, you could remove Gwen from the movie entirely and it wouldn't make a difference. Sure. And also her entire purpose in the film she exists to, one, show her boobs in one scene.
To be a punchline to a running Silent Bob gag.
Yeah, to be a punchline to a Silent Bob gag. And then two, to espout the great qualities of the male character, TS. Like that's the whole reason. Like, she's there to tell Brandy about how great TS is, to plant the idea in her head of getting back together with him. Those are not great qualities for a female character to have.
But her stuff with TS and Brody is to make sure they don't remain dinguses. So it's like she does have a moment there where she gets back with them, and this is one of the purposes for the whole changing. After her experiences in the dressing room with Silent Bob, she's not going to deal with those perverts. She'd rather be out there with those two perverts because they've seen her before.
Did you say perverts?
I will say mission not accomplished because those two kind of remain dinguses.
Yeah. But the thing is, they did glean from her. Mm-hmm. And then because she doesn't admit to any of TS's good qualities while she's with them, those are reserved for, because she knows Brandy and TS, they're good together and they should remain, and it's like, but when she's with TS, she levels them. And I think the second we get to that point when she meets up with them, that's when I think the film takes a turn, and I think those two characters, TS and Brody, take a turn to the positive ending that they get to. So I think she has a point, and yes, it's not so blatant. I think, again, this is sophomore effort,
sophomore slump.
How am I going to write this to make
It's mostly to make sure Brandy has a turnaround at the same time TS goes and has his fortune read. So he has a turnaround.
I agree. But I really do think Gwen has an important point to play in this picture. So.
I'm going to start introducing you on these episodes as Stan the Devil's Advocate Lee.
Yeah, but that makes her less character and more plot device.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the only reason that Gwen exists in the film is as a plot device.
Okay, but
a plot device in TNA.
But TS and I mean, I think everybody besides TS and Brody are probably would be considered plot devices because it's to move their quest to regain their girlfriends along. I think Renee might be a little bit more. Because of her involvement with Brody at the beginning, and then her involvement with Shannon in the middle, and then as part of the resolution.
Yeah, we do need to address the Ben Affleck of it all here in a minute. But first, while we're talking so much about Gwen, I want to bring us back for a second and talk about the real unfortunate victim of this entire film. And that is that poor cashier in the boutique shop that then has to handle and ring up the underwear that Gwen just tried on. If I was aware that a customer was putting on underwear and then taking it off in a store that I worked at and they brought it up to the register, I would not fucking touch it. I am not reaching over and picking up the panties that you just put on so I can ring them up for you.
Is that the same cashier that gets caught at the counter when they're having that yelling match?
Yes, it is.
I don't care if she thought it was beautiful. I have been stuck in those situations before, where it's like I can't walk away and you're having this conversation in front of me. I don't want to be here.
Well, she does run away, doesn't she?
No, she cries.
She's like, oh my God.
Yeah, just like that. So we're going to move on from that. We're moving through these topics very quickly, and I'm kind of glad about that.
It's Joy Lauren Adams, man. It's
while you're looking up your stuff on your phone, I'll pipe in. So the big, which I referenced at the top, is like the big Brody move of the hand in the ass and then shaking the stink palm.
Yeah, like
first of all, they let Jason Lee dig around in his butt for like a full minute.
Yeah, and while we're talking about things that you could cut from the movie and lose nothing, like this is just a gross out gag.
It is, especially since they cut to Michael Rooker licking his finger, like close up. Now that's only done to extend a scene where it's very early broadcast that Svenning has TS come talk to him again after telling him to get off his set, only to set him up so he could have him tossed out of the mall.
Yeah.
And again, in that scene, it's early setup. You see them, you see the camera cut over to where security guards are suddenly standing. He's like, oh, he's going to grab him and throw him out the mall. They extend it with Brody coming up and pulling the stink palm on him.
Yeah.
It's like,
it was really nice of those security guards to just stand there and wait and watch Svenning eat some chocolate-covered pretzels.
Can I point out, at no point do they establish... Well, one, they establish that it's impossible to get that smell off your hand for a couple days. Two, that is also the same hand he shakes hands with Stan Lee with later. I'm just gonna.
But you have the. I assume that he's washed his hands.
Well, yeah, but he says that stink stays there for a couple days, no matter what.
True that. But
and on top of that, he also went to the dirt mall. So.
Yeah, I don't even want to discuss the stink bomb. Like, ugh, God. Anyway,
maybe it's 2 days later when he meets Stanley.
No, the whole movie takes place over the course of 12 hours or so, much like Clerks.
What is the rest of this family like when you've got Randall, Brody, and then Walt Flanagan?
Right, the crazy cousin Walt who stuck a cat up his ass.
And one of
the only genuinely funny things in the entire movie is the story of cousin Walt sticking a cat up his ass. Yeah. Well, how else am I supposed to get the hamster out of there?
It's a classic joke. I mean,
right.
I found a few more genuinely, but they're completely dad jokes for me. So
point of trivia: the guy, I think it's the guy that TS asks, who has his head signed by Stan Lee, who's coming out of the comic shop. I think that's the guy.
The real Walt Flanagan.
Yes, that is apparently the real Walt Flanagan.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
The one he named the one he.
Because I do love the uncomfortable place. We're in a back of a Volkswagen.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about that for a moment.
I was gonna just not mention it at all.
Let's talk about the fact that Kevin Smith apparently up to this point had not heard about the fact that jokes are only funny in 3s and 5s.
Here's the thing about that. The punchline the first time is awkward at best. It's like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. But he loved that line so much, he made sure everyone said it at the opportunity.
Oh, for any listener, if it's been a long time since you watched the movie or you never have, if you never watched the movie, you're probably very confused by this podcast as a whole because we gave you no context for it whatsoever.
And if you watch it because of this podcast, you can't be mad at us. We didn't make you.
We tried to warn you. There's a repeated joke where Ben Affleck's character, again, we're going to have to talk about Ben Affleck in a second. Shannon has a reputation for seducing women and then getting them to have sex in, quote, an uncomfortable place. At which, whenever he says
Volkswagen Beetle?
Oh, you even fucked up the punchline. They say it like 11 times in the movie.
Where? In the like the backseat of a Volkswagen?
Yeah, that's the punchline. Not treated as a punchline in the movie. In the movie, it's treated as this weird fucking non sequitur thought that every single character who hears it has.
I don't get why there wasn't a variation of it every time, like a different place.
Right.
That would have been funnier. Like, I don't know why everyone had the same singular thought.
Right. Like, why couldn't it have been different for every person who hears it? Like, he likes to have sex with them in an uncomfortable place. Okay, the first person, what, like the backseat of a Volkswagen? The second person, he likes to have sex with them in an uncomfortable place. Like, what, at somebody's funeral? It just, if everyone throws out something else, an uncomfortable place, then the joke is funny. When 10 characters all say the exact same punchline, what, like the backseat of a Volkswagen?
When
You're getting me riled up here, guys.
When Gil Hicks says it, I had a payoff. So because you know he's Dante's cousin, right? Or brother, right?
Brother, yeah. I think.
I thought it was cousin too, but I don't know.
I don't know. Well, that's the perfect segue to our next topic. It would be the perfect segue if I hadn't. Go ahead, Chris.
I lost it. I'm sorry.
That's all right. So we have to take a minute here real quick to talk about, like I said, the Ben Affleck of it all. Because this is the start of 3 movies in a row. Actually, is he in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back?
He is. He is as his character from Chasing Amy.
Okay, so 4 movies back to back in which... 3 movies back to back in which... God damn. Okay, it is 4 that he appears in as different characters. So in this, he is Shannon, Renee's new boyfriend.
And the manager of Fashionable Mail.
Yes. And then in Chasing Amy, he is one of the lead protagonists. In Dogma, he's one of the villains, one of the rogue angels. And then he reappears as his Chasing Amy character in
Jay and
Silent Bob Strike Back.
And does a cameo in Clerks too.
Is he in Clerks too?
Yeah. In the beginning, when Dante and his fiance are making out on the counter, he's the customer who comes up.
Wow. So actually, that means that starting with Mallrats, Ben Affleck has been in every View Askew movie. Aside from Clerks, yeah.
Close too. I don't know if he was in the reboot. Probably.
He is in reboot.
He's in
yeah,
reboot.
he
okay.
is.
Because he's
everyone
him
but
and Joy
Clerks.
Lauren Adams are the denouement, I guess, because it's after the climax. But they have a great moment. Chasing Amy moment at the end.
No spoilers. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
it's great.
So yeah, we had to discuss Ben Affleck and how confusing it's going to be when we move on to the next movie, and he is not playing Shannon. And then when we move on to the next movie, and he is not playing either of his previous characters.
I think in Clerks 2, he was supposed to cameo as his character from Chasing Amy, but he was filming something at the time, and it required him to have a mustache that he couldn't shave. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So our actual next discussion topic is the connections to Clerks. Because as I mentioned, it takes place the day before. And if you watched Clerks and you remember the funeral that Dante and Randall go to, which ends with them knocking over the casket and having to flee.
Which, if you can see the animated version of the lost scene, go watch it.
Yeah. It turns out, well, and they say the name of in Clerks, they are going to the funeral of a poor young woman named Julie Dwyer, who we find out at the beginning of Mallrats. The reason that she had the embolism in a swimming pool is because T.S. made the mistake of telling her that the camera adds 10 pounds. And Julie, feeling fat-shamed, went to the local Y and started swimming laps until she dropped dead.
It's like 600, close to 700 laps. 'Cause I remember what lap number she said she was on.
So that is the first and most obvious connection.
And so T.S. wasn't just insensitive about Julie's death. He may have been...
Oh, he pretty much caused it.
Indirectly responsible.
Now,
and that's what I think What's-Her-Face was so angry about.
True, but in fairness to him, it was just an offhand. He didn't know about her issues or their weight.
Yeah.
He just threw out an offhand comment. Oh, the camera adds 10 pounds. It was just.
Well, there's also the unfortunate implications of the fact that probably the next day, the day which Clerks occurs, T.S. and Brandy are on their way to Florida and not going to Julie's funeral.
Because it happened the night before Mallrats takes place. When she dies.
So there's that. And then, of course, the other most obvious one is the inclusion of the character Gil Hicks, played by Brian O'Halloran, the same actor who played Dante Hicks in Clerks, supposedly cousins. Identical cousins, which I guess that's a thing because fuck you, that's why.
No, they're just playing off the idea that people in their family just.
But the cousin, not Dante, but Gil has a worse mullet.
He has like a mullet, yeah.
And this is not, in fact, the last time that Brian O'Halloran will appear as a Hicks cousin, but that will come later. But at one point there's also an offhand mention, I think, from Gwen about the character of Rick Darris.
Yes. Who is in Clerks?
Yes, he is. Rick is the asshole, like bodybuilder, the one who shames Dante for being out of shape,
and who basically admits to having slept with Caitlin while they were dating.
Yes,
that's like who Caitlin gave oral to, right? That didn't really count as cheating, right?
No.
That was afterwards.
You're
right?
thinking of Veronica.
Veronica, yes.
Caitlin was the.
Veronica was the muttering guy, the insane guy, right?
Willem. Not Willem, but...
yeah, it was Willem. Snowball.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's weird because...
There's a character in this movie
Willem.
also named Willem. Yeah, I know.
I didn't make that connection until just now. My brain knew it, but I didn't...
my first thought when we watched this again was, are they supposed to be the same character? Because
I don't think so.
It's implied in Clerks. I want to say this in a way that's not insensitive, but... that the Willem in Clerks, aka Snowball, is brain damaged in some way, or
kinda, but he's in college.
Yeah, it just makes the whole thing weirder. Whereas the Willem in Mallrats is played by Ethan Suplee, whose biggest crisis is that he can't see the fucking boat in the magic eye thing.
It's a schooner.
No, it's a boat, you stupid moron.
And he called him a bastard.
Yeah, you stupid bastard. Who hasn't wanted to call a child a bastard?
And I love that whole sequence.
I liked it. It was a nice, fun little gag to cut to every once in a while. Also, what's weird about that is I don't think they're meant to be the same character because the Willem played by Ethan Suplee, aside from being Ethan Suplee, he's got he's got a work shirt on, like a name patch work shirt, like he looks like he works at like a mechanic or something like that, like a service shirt. He's stained all the heck, so he looks more working class than it's implied that Willem from Clerks is. Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe Kevin Smith just loves the name Willem,
I guess.
But yeah, did you guys catch any? And of course, obviously, we already mentioned the fact that Randall and Brody are cousins, and because they share the cousin Walt, who all kinds of bad shit happens to him constantly.
Who apparently beat off on a plane.
I was gonna say then, yeah, we get two cousin Walter stories in this movie,
which Gil Hicks has the weirdest reaction to.
Oh God, I won't say it on this podcast.
I won't either.
Just go.
He just wants to know if there's a resolution to the
right.
story.
He wants to know if there was a climax to the story.
Yeah, kind of.
All right, so revisiting a topic from our Clerks episode, our penultimate topic, what was the most 90s thing about this movie? Was it the fact that malls still exist?
That the mall was the king of the social gathering spots, honestly.
Was it the fashion? Was it the casual homophobia?
Oh my God, that was like the crux of Ben Affleck's character's storyline.
Yeah.
Or the resolution to it as well. You know,
the unfortunate implications, yeah.
What gets me, part of what gets me is like there is some blatant homophobia in the movie, but then I feel like Smith tried and failed to balance it out by having Brody accuse someone of being homophobic. Mm-hmm. I think it may have been Gil Hicks, I can't remember.
Yeah. So is it malls? Is it fashion? Is it homophobia? Is it the comic books at the beginning? Stan, what's the most 90s thing about the movie?
He's supposed to be the highlight of male fashion, right? But Shannon's suit was so 90s horrible.
It was. It was so baggy.
Really
awful.
Bad. I mean, even Ben was thick then, and this was too
big for him, yeah.
So it's like I totally
was David Byrne-esque.
It was, and I totally realized what you guys have been trying to tell me for decades.
Wear clothes that fit you.
Wear clothes that fit me, and so now I'm wearing smalls and slim fit shit, and where I would buy large shirts for myself, and I didn't think I looked that bad, but now after seeing, pretty thick Ben in a suit that just was horrible, and that's budget, I guess, but I guess he should have had a budget for costumes. It's like somebody designed. I think it was on purpose because he's supposed to be this, Brody talks about it. He's like, he's supposed to be this, this pillar of male fashion, but he's really just, a slob in a bad suit, and it's like, and then we get the whole, oh my God, I can't jailbait stuff, and it's like,
that's right.
That might be the most 90s.
Well, we're gonna hold that. That's part of the last topic we're gonna discuss.
Boy.
We'll get to that.
But I would say the,
we'll go ahead and
bad 90s suits. And I was there for that, So just I totally know that.
As a general note, I'm aware that fashion is a constantly evolving thing, but unless you are like a legit male model, don't wear a T-shirt with a suit. You just don't do it.
Well, if you're Don Johnson, maybe then, but
not even if you're Don Johnson.
Miami Vice worked.
The 80s were over by this point.
Don't wear a T-shirt with a suit. It just looks ridiculous.
But I'm assuming that it was also kind of practical because he was able to fight in that suit. So it was probably practical more than it was.
David was the style at the time.
Yeah.
I'm like you said, I'm giving the devil advocacy to this, but it's like you have Ben Affleck in your movie, and you're just like, he's the, and I'm thinking, Kevin Smith costuming himself as Silent Bob is not the best costuming in the world, but it works for Silent Bob.
Those were his clothes,
and those were his clothes.
I've seen how he normally dresses.
I can't believe those were Ben's clothes. It's like you could make Shannon presentable, so we get that revelation at the end, and it's even more impactful if he's looking decent early on. So but no, having worked in a mall in the 90s, I spent a lot of time in the mall, and even when I was going to buy suits, they weren't that horrible. You know, I mean, yes, I bought stuff at Chess King and stuff like that, you know, but that is just typical bad, you know, bad stuff disguised as great fashion.
Sure,
and
sure.
It's what people that say they know fashion but really don't know fashion. They say, oh, this is what should take off, you know.
Also, what an unfortunately one-note rule for Ben Affleck, because I pulled up his IMDb to look at. He had not done a whole lot of big stuff before this. Mostly, the only big one is Dazed and Confused. But yeah, what a one-note character. Like, he only exists to be an asshole.
And then you get Goodwill.
And then after that, yeah, he was in Chasing Amy and Goodwill Hunting back to back.
Yeah,
Chris,
what a good year then.
What was the most 90s thing about the movie?
The VCR.
Well, yeah, the VCR.
No.
Oh, yeah, I didn't mention like the Sega Genesis.
Yeah, the Sega
Genesis.
I mean, technology, of course, especially. I think that was always going to be that's always going to be a problem looking back at movies from the '90s, because if nothing else, the rate at which technology advanced in the movie alone is always just going to be like dated from year to year almost.
Yeah.
This movie is pretty much a time capsule of the '90s.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking a lot of it was to allow Kevin Smith to allow himself to be able to do Return of the Jedi stuff. You know, it's like, so with the VCR, he could do his Jedi mind trick stuff, you know.
Yeah, can I tell you
to keep that fandom going, you know?
Can I just tell you how much, as a hardcore Star Wars nerd, it bothers me that him trying to move the cigarette in his hand is constantly referred to as a Jedi mind trick?
It's not.
Which a Jedi mind trick is like, putting an idea in somebody's head or making them do something. That's moving a cigarette in your hand is just known as telekinesis.
Right.
Something Jedis could do, but
somebody like Jay, you know, would call it a Jedi mind trick at that, especially at that time.
They just had to get it across to everyone else. He's referencing Star Wars.
He's referencing Star Wars.
That's the only thing. That was
because Silent Bob is totally serious and committed to it.
Right.
So he would probably not call it a Jedi mind trick. But Jay, in his wisdom of, ultimate stoner guy, is only going to see that surface level of, it's a trick. You know, he's not going to see the philosophy behind the force of it.
Oh my God! I'm
the force or La Force.
Oh God! Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the mall on this one.
I think, in a meta sense, the '90s thing is the super happy ending everybody got.
Yeah, that's one of them.
Where Brody is thought to be so hilarious, he becomes the host of the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck is that? I mean, honestly, they should have toned it back. It's like, hey, he gets a talk show, not the Tonight Show.
Right.
There's nothing that was demonstrated in that the dating show thing where that they crashed, where it made it feel to me like, oh, he's super funny. He was funny, but
if anything, those TV executives should have looked at him and been like, well, you're never fucking getting on any kind of game show ever again after the things that you said.
But you seem kind of but they should have been like that, but then been like, but there's something there when they give him a talk show.
Right.
I could have gone
or
with
something.
that. I could.
Yeah.
Or you're banned from whatever network we represent forever.
Right. Yeah, but to me personally, the most 90s thing, just the fact that it's set in a fucking mall.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So wanted zombies to take it over.
Or for Paul Blart to show up.
Paul Blart.
That's the only way you can make it worse.
Watching it all happen did bring back memories of the mall for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The mall used to be a magical place to go to.
And it was, and you had
you
had a schedule or an agenda, because early on when I was younger, it was like, okay, you can go look around at the mall, but you have to be back by a certain amount of time. And then technology advanced, and then suddenly you had a cell phone, or you had some way of being like, okay, then you were able to look around and run around more, and you had the stores you had to hit.
Yeah, and for me, like growing up in such a rural area where I grew up, we were 20 minutes away from anything. You know, the closest movie theater, the closest grocery store, the closest mall where I grew up was 45 minutes away. So if we were going to the mall, that was a special trip, and we were going out there with a purpose. Malls. All right.
It was also the last place I was able to find an arcade, and then it finally went away.
I wasn't sure where that story was going.
It was the last place you could get Hot Sam's, the pretzel.
Also wasn't sure where that sentence was going.
Well, they still have the Auntie Annie's or something like that?
But it's not the same. You know, this was like the little teeny tiny kiosk built into the wall, and it was just the stove and the counter, and so it wasn't like, you know, a counter full of, you know, treats in the front. No, it was just, but you could get your pretzels, man, your hot pretzels.
It was just a stove in the wall.
Well, I mean, it was built into.
It was like, a stove built into the person.
A vagrant built a stove into a wall, and
the unfortunate employee who was there making your pretzel fucking lives there.
And usually,
he just put a sign up so no one would suspect anything.
And the bathroom was like right next door, you know. So it's like if you had a bad reaction.
Exists.
What fucking architect designed this monstrosity? You're gonna put a stove.
It's like,
you're gonna put a stove in the wall for pretzels right next to the bathrooms.
The stove wasn't in the wall. It was like. You know, it was like...
Well, then make up your fucking mind. Was the stove in the wall or wasn't it?
But yeah.
Were elves making the pretzels?
Maybe.
Yeah, like what fucking mall did you go to?
Genesee Valley Center.
I can't make fun of him for being old because we're all old in this scenario and it sucks.
Unfortunately.
And I was... all my mall time was spent before cell phones came out. So it was like I never had the cell phone, you know, where you could... But because like I ended up... You know, I was... late teens, early 20s, you know, was my peak time. And it's like, so it's like I was working. I worked at Record Town and Tape World and...
Stove repair?
No.
That was an actual store, by the way.
The stoves were repaired by Pixies.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up, motherfuckers. You guys are fun.
All right, so our last topic of discussion that's not stoves and walls...
Why not?
Is, oh my God, what is the most controversial thing about the movie?
There's a list of this, and it's disturbing.
We already talked briefly about the casual homophobia of some of the characters, but Stan mentioned it briefly. Let's talk about the unfortunate implications.
It was a major subplot.
Yeah, this is a major subplot of the film.
It's pertinent to the climax of the movie.
Unfortunately, yes, you are correct.
That wasn't a proud laugh.
You are correct in several senses. One of the characters in this movie...
One of the first they meet when they get to the mall.
Yeah. One of the characters is a 15-year-old girl who has sex with older men and collects the data for a book that she is writing.
Well, we should point out that
14 to 30, so not necessarily they don't, you know, it's to
should point out she's set up to be a genius girl who has skipped grades all the way. She's a senior at the high school, but she's 15. All of the important adults in her life are letting her do this research project.
Yeah.
Where she and again, you know, Smith tries to cover his bases, or she's taking the utmost protection.
She's also recording every single encounter.
With their permission.
And her parents know about it, so that's okay.
No, it's not, because I should point out, that's still a crime.
It's still statutory rape, no matter which way you look at it.
It's still a crime.
I don't know what the age of consent is in New Jersey, but I can guarantee it's not 15. 17. And even if it was, like... Holy shit. The implications of this subplot, and also the fact that nobody seems to mind fucking a 15-year-old until...
Everyone takes that so blasé.
Until it is relevant to the plot.
Right.
That this is the reason that Ben Affleck's character ends up going to jail. Like, that's his comeuppance. But is it?
I just want to point out that I have once again sullied my search history for you. The age of consent in New Jersey is 16, so she cannot legally consent.
No, and it doesn't matter if the guys she is fucking consent to be
those waivers
filmed,
don't hold up in court.
Right. If they consent to being filmed, if they consent to being in a book, it doesn't matter. She's still underage. What the hell was Kevin Smith thinking with this subplot? Like, is it so outrageous?
I don't think they know her age, though.
They do. They say she's
because
15.
Shannon didn't know she was 15.
Oh, of course he's going to say that when he's getting arrested. He at the end of the film, when he's getting arrested, he says, "Oh, I thought she was 18." Of course they're going to say that, but it is not a secret among any of these characters. The only person, if I recall correctly, that seemed to be the least bit bothered by it was Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are we really so far removed 26 years later? You know, this came out in 95, that like in 95, was this not a big deal?
Well, how did you when you saw it at 16, how was your reaction then? Or was that something that just went
yeah,
past?
I was 16 years old. It just went right over my head.
And again, that is
it is if you're not paying
verse.
close attention, easy to miss that she says she's 15. It's like, because she looks,
I don't even think it's easy to miss. Like, well, it's an established part of her character.
Well, I think what helps you forget it is the actress who's playing her looks way older.
Yeah, she does. But also, to your point, Stan, like, to a 16-year-old boy, any mention of sex is just
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So it's like the movie was geared, and so it's like I'm sure that wasn't the now it would be. Because it would be a very much contemplation put to it.
Can I also point out the epilogue states that this book that is essentially like a research project or like a thesis that someone's writing has a movie about it scheduled to come out?
Who the hell is going to watch that movie?
The Academy.
Unfortunately.
It's all up over on YouTube or on the...
it's unfortunate. I thought he would be older than this, but it's not like this is actually going to be a saving grace or anything. Kevin Smith was 25 when Mallrats came out. That's not much better. I thought that he was around my age in his 30s, but
it kind of explains. It also kind of explains how his storytelling matures as he gets older.
Yeah, it really does. Like the fact that Kevin Smith was in his early 20s when he wrote this, and I'm assuming he was probably 24, 25 when he was directing it. Mm-hmm. Suddenly that explains a lot about the humor of the film. But yeah, I mean, is there anything in the film that you guys found more controversial than the 15-year-old fucking older guys?
That was the most controversial.
That's the most hardcore. And I mean, even for me, and I
be very careful about where you go with this sentence.
It's hard to shock
that I'm disturbed by stuff. But this is...
What a weird non-statement that was.
But you
guys know that I'm disturbed by stuff.
No, that I'm not disturbed by things. But this would be one of the things that and again, like you, when I first saw it, I didn't remember it when I saw it this time, the second go through, and it's like, oh, fuck, I forgot about that. But because at that time I saw it the first time, it wasn't really registering to me. And this might have only been 10, 15 years ago since the last time I saw it. So it's like I was even further along in it than you were, It's like, but I'm like, ooh, wow, that, and for it to be such a integral part of the plot.
Oh, yeah.
I was about to say,
dealt with so much, and it's not like a couple of things that were just because my next thing is that the hand in the ass stuff and stink palm would have been the next worst thing, but that wasn't even dealt with as long as this was. This was central to the movie, and it's like, okay. Did it get released with that? Because...
All right, watch that hand kung fu grip.
No, that's why I'm using my palm on the edge here. Did it get... Because it would seem like that wouldn't have made it through, like, any MPAA boards. Or
apparently it did. Yeah. I mean, this got a wide release.
That's the weird thing, is like, the studio was okay with that?
Yeah, it had famously, it was the exact opposite budget to... box office wise, it was the opposite of Clerks, which had a $27,000 budget and made millions. This was made on $6 million and made $2.5 million.
You know, and so the fact, but it's so pertinent to the plot and to the resolution of the movie that it's
the fact that this plays to an audience that was there for a dating show, like that tape plays.
Right, yeah. And I was going to say, much like Jay and Silent Bob and much like Gwen, you could cut this whole storyline from the movie and not lose anything. But it actually it's the resolution for Shannon's character. Before he can beat up Brody, he is arrested by the cops, and that was the crux of Brody's plan. Let's air this tape of a 15-year-old having sex in front of an audience full of people.
I get that he wanted to give Shannon a public comeuppance, but there had to have been some other plot he could have lit upon than that.
Right. Like, I don't know, maybe instead of that, one of Jay and Silent Bob's wacky schemes actually works for once.
Yeah.
Literally anything else.
It was, and it was probably, unfortunately, it was probably the most realistic part of this movie. And that's really hard for me, and that's why I think I was more disturbed by it, you know, is because it was actually the real moment, the real thing in this whole movie, which was totally, you know, like Chris was saying, that it was that 90s, you know, happy ending stuff, you know. It's like that was
for everybody but Shannon.
For everybody but Shannon.
Who is implied to be raped in prison.
Yes. And so it just made it more disturbing. And the fact that when the people saw it, it wasn't that intense of a reaction.
Oh, it was that stock audience gasp.
Yeah. And like they knew it already, that it already happened, and it's like, oh, somebody was brave enough to show Shannon doing this.
Well, with the way that everyone talks about it, apparently everyone in this town but Renee knows that he is essentially, you know, a serial rapist.
Right.
And also, apparently, everyone just knows that there's a 15-year-old going around having sex with random men and writing about it. I guarantee somebody.
It's the gag of news traveling fast because they do that a few times.
Right.
But it's just like, well, then how did you miss it?
Right.
And so the only thing I can even give it as a redeeming place in the movie is that it does provide Shannon's comeuppance. You know, and it does provide a way to get and
his, like we already said, his comeuppance itself is also the unfortunate implications there.
Yeah, but what he's the one getting the uncomfortable place.
Right. It's supposed to be ironic,
I'm not excusing it, but I will say I get that a 25-year-old's idea of doing some shock comedy and irony would probably be this. I get that.
The closest thing the film has to an antagonist being sexually assaulted in prison. I'm sure that was hilarious in 1995.
Well, that's just some of the horrifying things you can get away with in a comedy because it's comeuppance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the thing. It's like that whole plot thread and idea is horrifying in any other movie, but comedies and 90s comedies were very particularly bad about this. They would put stuff in there with horrifying implications and just write it off as a joke.
Mm-hmm. And I apologize for harping on it, but what made it more is that it was actually well performed. The actor that plays what's her face and the whole discussion.
I was wondering again what in the fuck you were talking about for a second.
Well, the idea that he actually spent time with the emotional content of it and with the and working with the actor. You know, it's like the lines were delivered well. You know, in
the scene she's introduced, she shows off her coding system for what guys do when they.
I don't know the actor. I don't know if she's gone on to do it, but she's really good in the scene. And every moment she's in, she does well. It's a different movie when she's in the scenes. It's like she was doing a different movie than the rest of the folks were.
Right.
But her plot is a terrifying indie movie.
Her plot is a terrifying indie
point.
movie. But the thing is, whenever she was in a scene with anybody else, it raised their game too. It just seemed like it was dealt with more than the rest of the movie was, and so it's like that even makes it more intense. And so it's like, is this what the movie was about?
We've already discussed. I couldn't tell you what the hell the movie's about.
I mean, she had to be on her game to be able to get through something that crass.
Exactly, and she sold it, and the thing is that, wow, okay, this plot line is in Mallrats. That would have it's
so fucking out of place.
Exactly.
You remember the classic '90s comedy about people hanging around a mall.
This is a Red State
dude is fucking all these dudes.
This is a Red State plot line, and Red State is not even a View Askew movie.
No, not technically. All right. Well,
I mean, the epilogue for Shannon was going to be my next most controversial thing, because that's like all those things are intertwined and they're all horrible.
Yeah, the '90s were a weird and terrifying time, everybody.
I think the other thing that's terrible is this is Gwen, who's there throughout the movie.
And Joey Lauren Adams' character.
Yeah. She also serves as the another female as part of the plot who is just decidedly just horrifically promiscuous.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's treated in much the same way that Caitlin is.
Yeah.
It's alternately like, well, look at her because she's celebrating her sexual freedom, and also at the same time, like, wow, look at this slut for having sex with so many guys. Like,
I think she's intended to come. I don't think she was ever really meant to be shamed for it. More like come across as a free spirit. But the comparisons to how flighty she is really kind of make her. I mean, just made me mentally start comparing her to Caitlin a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is a part of the larger conversation we had about had Kevin Smith ever met a woman, because it really does fall into that trope of they're either good girls like Brandy, who are naive and innocent, or they're promiscuous sluts.
Well, then there's also a Renee, who is on the good girl's side and is kind of a doormat. I mean, up until the point she breaks up with Brody.
Yeah. Kevin Smith doesn't know how to write women is the larger point there.
I don't know. It's like I
stand devil's advocate, Lee.
No. I think there is a celebratory, and it's like Gwen never takes on that mantle of slut shamed.
No.
She doesn't see herself as a slut. She sees herself as sexually free, but you
can't have a movie that treats her as both. Like you gotta pick a.
But see, there's gonna be the outside. She doesn't treat herself as both. She sees herself as a person that just happens to like to have sex.
Right, but when the punchline of the movie, when the punchline of the character is, look how many dudes she's had sex with, like that's not a good stereotype to perpetuate.
Agreed, but then that's why I'm saying. But when she goes to, Brandy, she dispels all that, because now she becomes that voice of reason that you were giving to Veronica. She becomes Veronica in that sense, because everything she says is totally reasoned. It's like she knows she's seen as this, promiscuous slut. She realizes that, but that's not in her vocabulary. She's like,
right. It's just, I think in my opinion, it's so largely unnecessary, especially since Kevin Smith had already sort of covered that with Caitlin in Clerks, in which her being a serial cheater was a very serious character flaw for her, and what made Dante always wanting to go back to her such a frustrating character flaw for him. So if you're going to treat if you're going to treat promiscuity as a character flaw for the purposes of a storytelling moment between characters, that's one thing. When you're going to treat it as a joke, I feel like it just doesn't land. Or it doesn't land now in 2021 the way that it would have in 1995.
I think she was, in my head at least, I think she was meant to be representative of like a more mature version of what Caitlin was.
Yes.
Who had matured past that kind of thinking and actions. But there was definitely there was no time.
What Caitlin could have become if she didn't have sex with a dead guy and go catatonic.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. And I will condition is that he improves on that Joy Lauren Adams character, on that Gwen character, with her character in Chasing Amy. So
Yeah.
which will.
Yeah,
I'm sure
I
we'll
just
talk
think the
about.
problem was there was no way they had the time to devote to showing that better.
No.
Agree. And so that's why Chasing Amy will be seen as a better movie.
Well, and that's really what I'm going to be interested to see here is going back on my Kevin Smith Odyssey now as an adult and not a 16-year-old, seeing how much my opinion of Chasing Amy changes now, having not seen it in so long. But I guess we're going to have to talk about that next month in March when we get to that film. So between now and then, we've got another episode of This Is a Work coming out next week. What is this, Elimination Chamber, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah, we've got Elimination Chamber
Or what I should
coming
call
up.
the WrestleMania pre-show.
Basically, yeah. So that's coming up. The pay-per-view is on... is it even really worth calling them a pay-per-view anymore?
It's the terminology that's stuck because that's how it started. It's the big monthly event.
It's the monthly thing for WWE.
Since it's on, you don't really pay for it anymore. You pay for the network and you get the pay-per-view.
Yeah, so that's going to be the 21st, Sunday the 21st. That's Elimination Chamber. So that episode of This Is a Work will be coming out sometime next week. And then in early March, we're going to have an off-topic episode, which we actually didn't do this month, of Long Walk Talks, along with probably another Long Walk Teeny Talk featuring my wife and co-host, Katie Bearden. And then coming up in March is going to be WrestleMania, both nights of it again.
God, they're doing 2 nights again.
Yes, they are. So, Stan, I always bring it up anyway just because it's funny, but you're not on social media, or at least where people can follow you.
I'm around Facebook. What the fuck, man?
If you want to go searching for a Stan Lee on Facebook,
I'm the
go
Stan
for it.
Lee
Good
now.
luck.
So,
Chris, if people want to follow you on social media, where can they do that at? Or if they want to reach out to you on social media, where's the best place to do that?
Well, like anyone else, when I want a good argument, I go on Twitter. You can reach me there at Chris the OK.
All right. And if you want to follow me online, you can do that on Instagram at DB Hensley. If you want to find out more information about Long Walk Productions, you can do that by going online and visiting longwalk.us. On Facebook, you can search for Long Walk Productions and Long Walk Podcasts to give us a like and a follow to keep up with us there. If you'd like to see more of our original content or hear a backlog of our older episodes of all the shows that are available on Long Walk Podcasts, you can follow those YouTube links in the show notes of this episode. And as always, if you enjoy this show, please make sure to give us a rating and a review on whatever platform you are listening on. So thank you very much for listening.
peace.